You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
You're listening to the Retro Mo Podcast. I'm your host, Mo, and I love to play and review old video games and a few new games too. If you prefer to read instead of listen, check out my written reviews at retromo.substack.com. In this episode, I'll be sharing my experience with Donkey Kong Country for the SNES, released in 1994. I've scored this game 9.5 out of 10. An amazing game. The revolutionary licensed platformer that put Rare on the map. Donkey Kong Country may have been the most hyped game release during the lifespan of the SNES. Nintendo pumped $16 million into US marketing alone, while other major games in the early 90s averaged $5 million for their entire marketing budget. I was just a young lad, but I remember seeing Donkey Kong Country banners and signs and commercials everywhere. Nintendo was wise to invest since they knew they had something special with Donkey Kong Country. Rare, the studio that created this game, used the profits from their NES game sales to make a huge investment in state-of-the-art Silicon Graphics Challenge workstations and Alias 3D rendering software. Each workstation cost £80,000 each, which, adjusted for inflation, is $254,000 US each. And it was often noted that the same machines were used to create the CGI dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, released in 1993. Even though Rare was planning to use their new tech to develop games for the upcoming N64, they realized they could also use these machines to create impressive SNES games. Howard Lincoln from Nintendo of America was impressed, and Rare was granted permission to use the Donkey Kong IP, which hadn't been touched since 1983. Nintendo was looking for the right game to compete with Sega's Aladdin, which turned heads by featuring contributions from Disney animators. The Stamper Brothers, the founders of Rare, were inspired by Mortal Kombat's use of digitized sprites instead of hand-drawn art, so they sought to create a platformer using pre-rendered graphics. Donkey Kong Country's completion required 18 months of development from a team of 20, Rare's biggest team yet, and they worked 12 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Talk about crunch. Other than some crucial feedback from Miyamoto, Rare worked independently from Nintendo. They drew inspiration from Super Mario Bros. 3 for the level design, aiming to keep the game accessible yet fast-paced for skilled players, with lots of hidden collectibles and bonus areas. Rare's hard work resulted in a smash hit that became the third best-selling SNES game of all time, 9.3 million copies sold, behind Super Mario World and Super Mario All-Stars. And all three of these titles were bundled with the SNES console at some point. Donkey Kong Country's wild success led to Nintendo purchasing a 25% stake, and eventually 49%, in Rare, making it the first non-Japanese studio to become a second-party developer for Nintendo. Rare had seen some success with Battletoads, but Donkey Kong Country was the game that really showcased their genius and put them on the map. Everything about Donkey Kong Country is fantastic. The revolutionary graphics are just a wonder. The sprites and animations look great, of course, but please, as you play this game, just take a minute to appreciate the detailed backgrounds. They are stunning. These multi-layered backgrounds apparently took hours upon hours to render and required Rare to develop a proprietary compression method called ACM. Sometimes I wonder what Donkey Kong Country would look and sound like if the game didn't have to fit on an SNES cartridge, a measly 4 megabytes. The Stampers pushed their team to the limits to see what they could accomplish. The sprites, animations, backgrounds, weather, lighting effects, everything looks so unbelievably good for a 1994 SNES game. The gameplay is top-notch as well. The pacing is quick, and the level design leads the player very well. Skilled players can roll, jump, swing, blast from barrels, and bounce through the level as quickly as they please. The next platform, rope, etc. is almost always in sight, and this was intentional. Players can also choose to take their time to explore in order to find hidden items and areas. The only slight knock on Donkey Kong Country is the minimal story. Aside from a few interactions with the Kongs on the map, there's not much story in the game, though well-developed stories were not really expected in most non-RPG games at this time. During development, Rare actually worked up 15 pages of story content, but Nintendo had them condense it down to fit in the instruction manual. Last but not least, we must acknowledge David Wise's legendary soundtrack. Donkey Kong Country's score features some timeless atmospheric pieces that brilliantly mix environmental sounds with an excellent SNES sound font that borrows heavily from the Korg wave station. Wise gives us loads of catchy jungle melodies, some chill ambient tunes, and even some 1940s-inspired jazz and swing. Wise was impressed with how Donkey Kong Country's visuals pushed the limits, and he also wanted to push the limits on the SNES's audio hardware. Aquatic ambiance alone took him 5 weeks to complete. It was unlike anything else on the SNES at the time. Also, check out Sam Miller's faithful high-quality restorations of this soundtrack. Donkey Kong Country is worthy of the hype. This is a must-play game for any retro gamer. In fact, I think I'm going to go play it right now. Thanks for listening to the Retro Mo podcast. As always, I do my best to keep all of my content spoiler-free and rated E for everyone. If you find this podcast enjoyable or helpful, tell a friend and consider giving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. If you have questions or comments, you can send an email to retromopodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Godspeed.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.